And our next speaker is Louis Kruger, who is going to be talking about surrogacy as a same-sex male couple. Louis Kruger holds a BA Law and LLB degree from University of South Africa, and he's currently completing a Master's of Law with specialization in divorce and family law. In 2018, he was admitted as a Notary Public and has right of appearance in the High Court of South Africa. He is completing his final year honors degree in social work and plans to dedicate time to infertility and family law matters such as surrogacy and adoption. Louis, you can take the stage. Thank you very much.
So I think to start off, I was born with one impediment which led to the next, and that impediment was my sexuality. And that, of course, kind of took a uterus out of the equation for the future. And for as long as I can remember, it was an absolute dream of mine to have my own kids. And I remember growing up and throughout school and university, just always being cognizant of the fact that because of who I am, my sexuality, that may not be possible. And meeting my now husband, Llewellyn, we spoke about children from, I think, our very first date. And it was something that we both knew from the beginning we really wanted. My first complication started with a genetic condition that I was born with, skin condition, which for many years doctors in South Africa, many might never come across it in practice, but very little was known about it. And I had the unique opportunity to be involved with a study done by Yale University, had to send a whole lot of blood samples with various couriers to try and get it to the USA. And finally, about a year later, received the results from Yale, which was really positive, and that identified the gene involved in my particular skin condition. And they said to me, it's recessive. The chances of passing it on are obviously now a lot less than initially thought. Go ahead. And it's really nice to be here today physically, where a number of service providers have been involved in our journey. Kelly, who spoke earlier, assisted us with that initial genetic testing. We were able to confirm it. And that was really the start of the journey, was science telling us that despite a genetic condition that I believed would preclude me from having my own child, we could now start. And as an attorney, we all specialize in various areas of law. Mine is property. I'm good at creating or giving people homes to raise their children in, but had no real knowledge about how we actually create the children to go into the homes. And knowing Saskia and the team from IFASA, they put us in touch with a number of different clinics, and our attorney who eventually assisted us in the whole process. So starting from kind of bare bones was finding out what the cost implication would be. And the journey is different for everyone depending on kind of how complicated it may become. Then it was identifying an egg donor, our fertility clinic, and so the rest of the puzzle pieces that we needed to put together. So we started, which was, we thought, would be quite a short legal journey. It ended up being slightly longer with a few complications that we didn't anticipate initially, and having to have redo some of our psychological evaluations. So quite a lot of invasive, and I think that's probably a word that characterizes the surrogacy process for me from a legal perspective, is just how invasive it was. When we consider that young teenagers may conceive without any planning, without anyone asking them any questions, to have to expose yourself, your spouse, your surrogate, your egg donor, and everyone to extensive psychological evaluation, having your finances reviewed or having to be provided to the court, having to provide photos of your home, really just felt quite invasive. And I know that it wasn't particularly because we're a same-sex couple, that's standard practice. I know that our courts are trying to act in the best interest of the child, but when you're in that process, it doesn't feel like it's being done for quite the right reason. So I think invasive is a word that aptly describes the process that we experienced, and I think anyone going through the journey needs to be prepared to kind of lay bare all this information and having to really almost convince a third party that you will be a good parent, and that you should be allowed to continue with this particular journey. So we started with all the various steps, from getting police clearances, compiling our financial history, going to our psych evaluations, getting those reports in, and really just giving all the history that was needed to our legal team, and then started the process of finding an egg donor. And while there are a number of clinics available to assist, I really just felt that because this to me was such an important journey, Llewellyn and I decided that we would start kind of with the lowest hanging fruit, and we would start with family, and then we would start with friends, and if we couldn't get an egg donor from that, we would then approach clinics and go on the anonymous route. So we identified first a friend who was happy to do it, went for the first step, the AMH blood test, and unfortunately the results were quite disappointing. And I think what was really tough for Llewellyn and myself was then having to sit with this person who'd now agreed and mentally prepared themselves to be an egg donor for us, had kind of discussed it with their families, thought about all the pros and cons, having to then sit down with them and say, sorry, but we can't use you as a donor, and in fact, you need to get to a specialist as soon as possible, because if you want to have your own children, there may be a slight impediment or complications. So that happened the first time. We had a second friend agree. Again, we went through the whole process, everyone very excited. We had a number of coffee dates to explain what would be involved, how we understood the process, what would be needed from the egg donors. And again, we did that faithful trip to the path lab for blood draw, got the results the next day, and again, unfortunately, quite a disappointing result. Another really hard conversation to have with someone who was actually quite excited about going along with us on the journey, herself not necessarily wanting or no prospect of having children in the near future. Again, saying to her, unfortunately, results are not good. You need to get to a doctor. It's not for us. You need to do what you need to do for yourself. Look at, freezing your own eggs for when the time is right for you. So, third time lucky, a friend went, had incredible AMH results, and so the process started. Dr. Van Tonder, who spoke earlier, was our chosen physician. We took our egg donor there, and the process started. And it really, for us, fortunately, really went like clockwork. And at the same time, we were waiting for a judge who had disappeared or gone off the radar for a few weeks to make a final decision about our case. Not coming back to us, we had to amend some documents and redo some of the steps, which we did as quickly as we possibly could. We actually flew our surrogate down to KZN for the assessment, just to get it done as soon as possible. In the meantime, Dr. Van Tonder and his team at Hope started the treatment for our egg donor, and fortunately, we were really, really lucky to get 26 eggs at the initial extraction, of which 19 were mature, so we were at a really good start. But then we had to stop because we needed our court order to be in place before we could do anything else. And fortunately, in December last year, the order was finally granted, and we could hit the ground running, and we decided we will enjoy Christmas, and in January, as soon as everything opened up, we would start. And yeah, really, really blessed to say that everything ran according to plan. We have a number of embryos on ice. We did our first transfer in March, beginning of March this year, and fortunately the first transfer was successful. And we are now pregnant and due in November. A spoiled little girl, Emma Isabella, will make her appearance mid-November, which we're all incredibly excited about. But we were lucky. We were lucky to find a surrogate who has been absolutely textbooked from really agreeing to be our surrogate without us asking, to ticking every single box that needed to be ticked from a legal perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a health perspective, from a medical perspective, and then just from relationship and cooperation. We've been incredibly blessed that up to date, everything has been incredibly smooth, everything's been positive. All our NIPT tests have come back normal, blood tests have been normal, growth has been normal, our scans have been incredible. So from that part of the journey, it's been really exciting. And I think what we're most grateful for is that we haven't had to adapt our lifestyle for this pregnancy. Llewellyn and I can still enjoy some wine, we can still go out late at night. Our surrogate, unfortunately, is slightly more restricted. So, yeah, in closing, it's been a really positive journey for us. There were some obstacles. I think anyone who embarks on the journey needs to know that it literally takes some blood, sweat, and tears. The financial aspect to it really is the smallest part of the journey. And just being prepared for any eventuality, asking the questions, having the difficult conversations. Robin will be chatting soon about some of the discussions and the topics we've had with our surrogate throughout. What happens if any of the genetic tests come back abnormal? Whose life do we save if there's a complication? So there are some really difficult conversations to be had throughout the journey. Fortunately, it's spread out over quite a long time, so you've got enough time to really get your head around it. But for us, it's been really positive. If anyone wants to chat, get more information, we're always available. But from Llewellyn and myself to everyone here today, our doctors, our embryologists, our genetic testing partners, everyone, Robin, everyone has been part of the journey. Thank you very much, and we hope at the expo next year we'll be pushing one pram, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you about our next surrogacy journey. Thank you.